Welcome back to 6 and 6, where we cover 6 stories from around the world in 6 minutes or less. With that said, start your timer. We begin today in South America, where former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has filed an appeal against a house arrest order related to allegations of undermining democratic institutions during his presidency. The legal action highlights ongoing political tensions in Brazil, with Bolsonaro's legal team arguing that the charges lack sufficient evidence and represent an overreach of judicial power. The case underscores the deep divisions between Bolsonaro's supporters and opponents in the Brazilian political landscape. From Reuters, quote, "There's an undeniable attempt to silence voices that oppose the current political disposition in Brazil," said Bolsonaro in a prepared statement. The legal teams argued that the allegations are politically motivated and that all of Bolsonaro's actions were within the legal framework of his presidential powers, end quote. Next, we travel across the Atlantic to Africa, where the UN Human Rights Chief reported that M23 rebels killed 319 civilians in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo during July, highlighting ongoing regional conflicts. The violence primarily occurred in North and South Kivu provinces, involving the Tutsi ethnic group dominated M23 rebels targeting civilians. This attack has caused massive population displacements and severe humanitarian crises, with the UN condemning the actions as violations of international human rights law. From Reuters, quote, "The M23 rebels were accused of targeting civilians indiscriminately, killing them in this series of attacks. Thousands of people have been forced to flee their homes, adding to the number of displaced persons in the country who urgently need humanitarian aid," end quote. Next, we travel back across the Atlantic to Mexico, where they are trying to make a deal with the Dominican Republic. They're joining forces to address the growing sargassum seaweed problem affecting their coastal regions. The collaborative effort focuses on developing scientific and technological solutions to mitigate the environmental and economic impacts of the seaweed invasion. By pooling resources and sharing strategies, both countries aim to protect their tourism-dependent economies and marine ecosystems. From Reuters, quote, "Sargassum has become a persistent problem along the shores of many Caribbean countries, affecting not only the natural beauty and health of their beaches, but also having significant economic impacts. Through working together, they hope to set a precedent for tackling other environmental challenges in the region." Across the Pacific, we have another team up between Cambodia and Thailand, where they have reached a significant diplomatic agreement to allow ASEAN observers to monitor their ceasefire, expected to continue until at least the end of 2025. This initiative aims to resolve historical tensions surrounding the Praia Vineyard Temple area and demonstrates a commitment to regional peace and cooperation. The involvement of ASEAN represents a neutral approach to preventing further conflicts and promoting dialogue between the two nations. From Reuters, quote, "This is a pivotal step towards securing lasting peace in our region," stated Cambodia's foreign minister. The ASEAN observers will provide an unbiased perspective and help ensure compliance with ceasefire agreements, marking a progressive moment in Cambodia and Thailand's bilateral relations, end quote. Next, we travel south to New Zealand, where the Reserve Bank of New Zealand has detected a slight decrease in inflation expectations for the third quarter based on a recent survey. This modest reduction suggests businesses and economists anticipate a moderately slower price rise compared to previous forecasts. The finding could potentially influence the central bank's monetary policy decisions, offering some flexibility in managing interest rates and economic conditions. From Reuters, quote, "While the reduction is expected, inflation is marginal. Nonetheless, it reflects a trend that policymakers will find encouraging given their prolonged efforts to curb rising prices without stifling economic growth," end quote. And finally, we travel back across the world to Europe, where a recent academic research study has uncovered that the British monarchy's deep historical involvement in the slave trade, revealing not just passive proliferation, but active participation in slave-based commerce. These findings have intensified pressure on the royal family to acknowledge its historical role and consider potential reparations. The research represents a significant effort to transparently examine the monarchy's colonial past and its economic foundations in enslaved labor. And from Reuters, quote, "This new academic work carried out by historians specialized in British colonial history has traced the financial gains accrued by the British monarchy from the slave trade activities. Critics are calling calling for public acknowledgement, apologies, and discussions on reparations to address the atrocities linked to the monarchy's history of slave involvement. End quote. And if you want to read any of today's articles in their entirety, you can find all of them linked in the description below the like and subscribe button. Also down there, you can find the podcast on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Podvine, as well as the Twitter handle at Your Daily Flip, where I post links to these episodes on Tuesday and Thursday, and the normal podcast that's U.S. focused on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So with all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe. Don't die.